Hello, my name's Caleb Lane, and I'm here to tell you about my project. With my project, I went over the pollution within the Sandusky River Watershed. So I had three main goals going into this. I wanted to find out what the pollutants are within the watershed, and after that, I wanted to find out where they're coming from, so that I can hopefully pinpoint exactly what the problem areas are. And then I wanted to find out if there was anything being done about it right now. If not, then I know that there could be action done to go and help that watershed. Most of my data came from the EPA. Here is where I found all the different pollutants, and they actually had a very large data set that covered all of America and every little catchment within America. And then I found the rest of my data with the ODNR. Here I was able to find the different watershed boundaries. So if you're not familiar, there's large watersheds, and then they're also um, defined within basins, and which are further defined within catchments. So I was specifically looking at the Lake Erie, Western Lake Erie Basin 1, which is considered the Sandusky River watershed. And I was able to find this using the ODNR website and data. While I was doing this project, I started off with the intersect tool. After I got all my data loaded onto ArcGIS, I intersected the two layers so that I could exclusively find the catchment pollutions within the Sandusky River watershed. After that, I was able to extract that and put it into a different data frame, put that vector into a different data frame so that I could work on the specific area I wanted to work with. Then I went to and used the search functions. So what I did here was I looked through that EPA data and I extracted every form of pollutant because there was far more data within the EPA files than pollution. So there was also different types of recreation, pretty much anything to do with water. But I was focusing on the pollution. So I'd use the search function to find out what pollutants affected each catchment, and I extracted them from the file. And then I used all of them extracted files for each type of pollution, and I overlaid them together along with a color and a transparency so that we could see different intensity of pollution depending on how many pollutants there are within each area. This can be seen on my first map here. So on the left here you can see that some areas have a more intense red. Them areas are specifically have more pollutants in them. So the redder it is, the more types of pollutants that are affecting that catchment. I was also able to find the total number of catchments affected by each pollution. So on my right here, you can see the chart of different pollutants, and I have it labeled as most polluting to least polluting from top to bottom. So you can see here pathogens were the worst case of pollutants, and this is pretty common. This was actually affecting every catchment, and it's not very surprising. So this can be anything from E. coli, salmonella. So it's not very shocking to see something like this. Otherwise, the second most pollutant was heavy nutrients. This was actually to be expected from the area. It's a very heavily farmed area, so we already knew that over application was a big problem for Lake Erie. It's what causes most of the algae blooms, and this can be seen with the EPA's data. As you can see, a large majority of our catchments had heavy nutrients. Then third here we have sedimentation. So this is caused from heavy sediments being released into different creeks and rivers. And this can be anything from construction to people messing around in the creek. There's really all sorts of causes, but the most obvious one is habitat alteration. And heavy sedimentation can be the cause of our fourth pollutant, oxygen depletion. So what happens is when there's a lot of sediment in a water, the light can't reach the bottom of the water. So the plants aren't able to photosynthesize and turn CO2 into oxygen. This reduces the amount of oxygen within water and really harms the fish populations. And then on the bottom here, you can see we have some three minor pollutants: algae growth, pesticides, and ammonia. This can really be caused by the major pollutants. Algae growth is very common with heavy nutrients, as well as pesticides and ammonia. So it's nothing real surprising there. What you can find, which in my opinion is a little surprising, is there isn't really a pattern to be found on the map. I kind of assumed we would see something where it would lie along the Sandusky River and it would get more intense as we got closer to Lake Erie. And you could try and make that case, but as you can see in the south, we do have some darker catchments. So I wouldn't really go and say that pollutants are increasing as you go down the river. You would need more further testing and you would need to go on foot to find that data. Now, this really covered my first two questions: what were the pollutants and where they were coming from. And you can really see that some catchments are in worse conditions than others. But this gets me to my next point, is what's being done about it. So when I was going through the EPA data, I found a couple interesting things. They had catchments that were either on a 303D list or a TMDL has been declared. Now, the 303D list is a list of different catchments across America that are under risk, meaning that they have heavy pollution and there's currently being work done to try and mitigate that. So that really kind of calmed my senses. As you can see, a lot of the catchments are on the 303D list. So there is things being done in the catchments. But there are still some areas where that were a little intense that aren't on that 303D list and should probably be relooked at. Now on the right here, you can see all the catchments that have a TMDL declared. What a TMDL is, it stands for total max daily load, and this is a set amount of pollution that's allowed. So someone declares how much pollution is allowed within a creek or river, and this is done to ensure that the pollutant doesn't go over a critical level that could be harmful to people or animals. This is kind of expected to be in every catchment. You really don't want to go over any TMDLs because it can be a big public health concern. So this was kind of looking at this was settling for me because it made me realize we're not in as much risk as I may think, and there is things being done to try and solve the problems that we're finding in Sandusky River Watershed. In conclusion, the main pollutants were pathogens, heavy nutrients, and sedimentation, and these are fairly easy problems that we can try and fix within the watershed. I was able to also find the areas that these pollutants were coming from as well, but I really didn't find a pattern. I was kind of hoping to find a pattern because that would make it a lot easier to source one area to kind of sift through all the pollution, but that's not the case here. And lastly, I did find out if there was anything being done. I found the 303D list, and I've seen that There is a TMDL designated in the majority of the catchment areas. Overall, I think I did accomplish the goal of finding out what the problem areas were, what was causing it, and if there was anything done. Thank you for listening to my topic, and I hope you email me any questions you may have about what I've done here. Thank you. Have a good day.